Here's some ideas you never heard before. Some business secret weapons that we have in store. It's Laura Hodgson, Nowcorp CEO, with some action ideas to help your company grow.
Shehzin, you work with businesses of all sizes as they embark on this idea of selling their product or their service outside the United States. My personal experience with that, I had a small business several years ago. It was a patented children's product. And every week I would get orders from outside the US. And honestly, every week I would log them in a notebook and tell them I would get back to them later because I didn't even know where to start. It was particularly scary to think about, were the orders even real or was it fraudulent? How was I going to ship this stuff if it wasn't just in a little FedEx envelope going to Michigan? And how would I even think about getting paid? So maybe share with us a story of other businesses you've worked with. Maybe they were as afraid as I was and just didn't even pursue it. But how did you get them comfortable with something so scary?
Yeah, so we give them the knowledge, right? We give them the information they need to feel confident about going into a market and representing their product. So one great example that I have, one of my favorite companies I've worked with is a craft brewery, and
well, I know why that's your favorite.
So they're a well-known one in Georgia, and they had just started getting some inquiries from Europe and weren't sure if they were, legit, if they were ready to, start sending beer overseas, how they would do that. Would it be in cans? Would it be in bottles? So our office in Germany actually did some due diligence for them on the distributor and potential importer, and helped them figure out that this is a known importer of international brews, and it's a great potential opportunity, and really help them cement that relationship, and extrapolating on that example, the same company started getting inquiries from South Korea, and Georgia has an office in Korea. So our office in Korea helped them do the market research that led them to understand that what the taste of the Korean customer was, so that they formulated a special ale just for the Korean market. Wow. And did that in an 18-ounce can. So even a special size can and special packaging for the Korean market. So that's sort of how we help companies, even if there are some differences, right, that the customer base, some nuances that we need to be aware of. Yeah. We can help you become a better fit.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point because, we think about things like, how am I going to ship it? How am I going to package it? But I know one of the things I hadn't thought about was labeling, right? I mean, there may be some pretty impressive costs related to, in the case you just described, a new sized can, which they may not sell in the United States. For me, it was because it was a children's product. There were all different types of regulations around labeling in different countries, obviously in different languages. So how do you get to know what you don't know? Because that was, to me, it was all the unknown. And it sort of paralyzed me, like, oh my gosh, I got to go make labels with a different language on it. That's a huge fixed cost. And I don't know if I'm going to sell it. So how do you get people to take that big, scary unknown and break it down into parts?
Sure. So the first thing is finding the right partner, right, in an international market. If you're a Georgia farmer and you're selling pecans into China, you want to find a partner that you trust. So that means going into the market, having someone like the state of Georgia have a representative that speaks the language that can help you with some of those really scary and intimidating unknowns when you're talking to a potential distributor or buyer in China, and then having that partner tell you exactly what the requirements are, and then finding your partner here stateside in Georgia that will help you with your labeling, help you with co-packing or packaging. And we have resources at the department to help companies figure all that out.
So you said the word partner like 6 times. So this is really not about your product or the packaging. It's really about people. And I know you and I share some things in common. We're both Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, which is awesome. But you also have the experience of living abroad and living in a country where it wasn't a country you were from or a country you spoke the language. So do you have any personal advice you would give someone that's going into a company or a culture or a country that they have no experience with when it comes to partners? How do you think about trust?
Yeah, I think having an open mind and open heart goes a long way. Obviously, when you're a business owner, you're thinking about the bottom line and competitiveness, but it's really important, when doing business internationally to focus on the relationship, to build that trust. And that takes time. You have to invest more time in not just emails and phone calls, but face to face. So going into the market, building that rapport, and being open to trying new foods, making rounds with your potential partner, and being really open to the culture and the differences that might exist as well.
Well, and it's interesting because as I listen to you describe that, I'm thinking, not everyone in this podcast is going to go ship their product abroad, or it's even harder if you're a service business, right? Because doing services abroad is very personal. But what you just described is critical for any business, whether you're going international or not, because even within the United States, whether you're selling into South Georgia or you're selling into Michigan or you're selling to customers in California, we still have to think about those relationships and some of the cultural differences within our own country. One of my big learnings, the children's product I had was called Nourish, and I had in my mind this like perfect customer that I was selling to, probably because it was me. I mean, I was solving my own problem, but it wasn't until I got out there in different markets and realized that, my customer in California was very different than my customer in Florida. A mother's life when they're on the go with children in an urban area was very different than a mother's life on the go in a rural area. So how do we take some of the lessons that you've learned and apply them here in our own backyard?
Sure. U.S. is huge, right? In itself, a huge customer base and market. And I think you really were spot on when you shared the story of having a customer in California versus here. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Can we start over?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. But she'll get her question still.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can.
So you were asking me.
So how do we use some of the experiences or the challenges that you overcome in selling internationally? How do we use that to be better business people, even domestically?
Right.
So
Okay.
we'll
Got
pick
it.
it up right there. This is where I really would like you to get more personal.
Yeah.
What's worked for me? I mean, you can't.
I have to
can't
work
go
with
like
country. Well, maybe you say something like
can't yeah.
or you could say I've had to work with companies from all over the United States, all of whom are at some point considering, what they might be doing. Even though they have a presence in Georgia, they may be from other places.
Right.
So how do you get to know them first before you help them go international?
Okay. Got it.
Kind of how do you build the personal relationships for your clients to help them better?
Got it. So if I'm going to work with a Georgia company or, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. But if I'm going to work with a Georgia company, then it's important for me to understand where they're coming from, what their background is, whether they're from South Georgia, from the coast, from Metro Atlanta, and understand what experiences they bring when representing their brand and their product. So, for example, working with that pecan farmer from South Georgia, which pecans are one of our biggest industries, and we export most of our pecans to China, which is partly why they're so expensive here.
I did not know that.
It's partly why they're so expensive here. China has huge demand for Georgia pecans. And, when the pecan industry was taking off and exporting to China, one of the companies that started working with us, the farmer didn't even have a passport. So,
Hard to go to China without a passport.
That's right. So, getting the passport, getting the visa. So really, really
Did he go by himself?
He
Or
did.
did you go with him? He
No,
flew over by himself.
He went by himself.
Wow.
Yeah, our China office connected with him and
Okay.
helped him with some due diligence. And then he was ready to go into the market to meet with a potential partner and do some sales. But everything that came before that, the passport, the visa, the plane tickets, the itinerary, sometimes, even though my role is really, more business development, sometimes, I have to take a step back and see that this is also part of the business development, right? That helping the company, helping the farmer get past some of the
Right.
logistical and the things that you don't really think about, right?
Right. When you were younger and you lived abroad as an expat, who helped you? Did you have people that helped you kind
Yes.
of get acclimated? And what were the things they did that were invaluable to you?
I think showing me that it doesn't matter where you come from, that we all kind of care about the same things. So I spent my formative years in the Middle East from when I was 10 to 17 and was really far away from U.S. culture. But I was around other Westerners. So, I always identified as American, but it was great when someone from Europe or someone from Lebanon, had the same music interests as me, or was watching the same movie as me, or the same TV show as me, reading the same books as me. You realize that just because you're from a certain place doesn't mean that we're so different. And there's all these common threads, especially in a global world connected by the internet and pop culture and all of that. That's how I connected to
Right.
a lot of people that were from the Middle East or not from the U.S.
So one thing that I'm taking away from this is if I have a product or service and I want to take it abroad, not only do I need to understand the culture there and obviously understand my own brand, but if my product or service can be the connector, can be that commonality, then I probably have a huge opportunity, right? I mean, if my product or service connects people across different backgrounds through a common need or a common desire, whether it's health for your children or what have you, if we can get to that commonality, that's probably the base for success for any business that wants to go into another culture.
Absolutely. And the great thing for U.S. businesses and for Georgia businesses is that what they have going for them is a U.S. brand, right? We're trusted. We're known to produce quality products and services and technology, and we've already got that going for us. So, that for a small business owner, it's going that extra step and seeing how they can take a product that's doing great here or a service and be open to maybe making a few tweaks or making a few packaging changes so that it's a fit for
Right.
a foreign market.
So I've always been curious, if I were to go into my first meeting with a potential customer in another culture, do I talk more or do I listen more?
I would say listen more and really honestly answer the questions that are being asked. So if they ask you if you have bilingual labels and you say no, that's okay because you can do that.
Right.
If they ask you, if you've sold into their market before and you say no, that's okay. That's why you're there, or that's why you're on the phone or emailing trying to build a relationship.
So honesty is key.
Yes.
Because I do know a lot of times as a small business, you have a little bit of a Napoleon complex and you want to pretend you can do more than you can do. And I think that is such great advice to just be honest, be real about what you have, what you don't have, because then people can help you.
Absolutely. And, just if you're trying to make a sale, for example, and you might not have that inventory just yet, right? Craft beer, that you're making a special ale, be upfront. It's going to take 6 months before you could ship that container.
Right. The hand, it's
Go ahead, no, it's not gonna be on the video.
okay, so I just want to summarize a little bit of what we've talked about because I think there's some fascinating takeaways. Obviously, we talked a lot about relationships, and sometimes it's easy to get caught up in your great product or your great service, but you have to step back and remember that it's all about the people and it's about trust and relationships. The other thing you said that that I think everybody could benefit from is this idea of being honest about what you can do today versus what you hope to be able to do in the future. And that's important whether we're sitting here in Georgia trying to sell into Saudi Arabia or whether we're sitting here in Georgia trying to sell into, Columbus, Georgia. And so relationships, honesty, and then I think, you talked a lot about just really asking questions and being open to resources. And maybe tell us a little bit, we can close with a little bit of what are the resources that, Georgia is constantly listed as like the top state to do business in. What are the resources that we have, and how do I, if I'm sitting at home listening to this podcast or driving to work and thinking, I am never going to sell my stuff international, but after I hear this, maybe I should look into it because I don't know what I don't know. How do we reach out to you, and what resources should we take advantage of?
Absolutely. So Georgia did almost $40 billion in exports last year. And
wow.
I like to tell small businesses, even if you're not ready, tap into the ecosystem, connect with the resources, and plant those seeds. So we're here at the Georgia Department of Economic Development, our International Trade Division. We have 12 international offices located strategically across the globe, and they are there to stretch the resources of our SMEs and startups and help them with that market research, with that due diligence, finding partners in the market and helping them with those nuts and bolts.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We have a client at Now Account that when we met them, they had only sold domestically. They had had a lot of interest from abroad, particularly Australia, Asia, etc. But their fear was more in not physically how to get the product there because they sell chemicals, but it was more just how are they going to get paid? When are they going to get paid? How do they deal with all that unknown? And once they heard about a solution that would help them, which in this case was Now Account, it opened up a whole new world to them. And in hindsight, what they told us is that not only is a huge part of their business international now, but the international market opened up to them a whole new branch of their company. So it showed them a whole new need that maybe wasn't even here in the United States. And so now their business is sort of, forked into multiple businesses, which is really exciting. So I think your point is don't wait until you think you're ready to go international to at least explore if it could be valuable to you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the Secret Weapon podcast. We've given you some fantastic secret weapons to really grow your business, probably beyond your wildest dreams. And we hope you'll join us next time.
Thank you for joining us today. For more Secret Weapons podcasts, please join us at nowcorp.com.